Today we're completing our NHL Playoff Preview series, taking a look at the Winnipeg Jets and the Edmonton Oilers. We'll compare these teams and make a prediction coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, today is the 8th installment in the final one of the first round of the 2021 NHL Playoffs, where we preview each series and make predictions here. So we're going to take a look at the Oilers and Jets, look at some regular season stats, see how they compare, see how the advantages and disadvantages should lie here. We're going to take a look at the goaltending, the top scores, and then I'll give you my predictions here at the end. So, of course, as I mentioned, if you haven't caught the other preview videos, they're all posted to the channel. Have a look and certainly give me your thoughts. I'd like to know what everybody thinks in all of these playoff series here coming down the stretch. And I will be putting together a video as well, likely today or tomorrow, with a full kind of playoff predictions, giving you my full first round predictions, which you'll already have known, and then beyond that, including my Stanley Cup winners. So that'll be coming here very shortly. So let's stay tuned for that, and we'll jump into the regular season stats here by the Oilers and the Winnipeg Jets and see how they compare. So, of course, the Winnipeg Jets and Edmonton Oilers are the 2-3 series here in the North Division. The final one to be previewed. Of course, there'll be the second final one to get underway. They go on Wednesday, whereas the Leafs and Habs start on Thursday. The Oilers, of course, finished here with a 35-19-2 record for 72 points for second place in the North, whereas the Jets were a little bit lower, but finished third with a record of 30-23-3 for 63 points. There were certainly times earlier in the year that the Jets were contending for either second place or even first, but they did not have a strong finish to the season. The last 10-15 games especially were a little rough. Didn't win nearly as many as they looked like they should have, and now they find themselves in third place with a much lower record, but certainly wouldn't have made much impact to who they play in the playoffs here. So obviously if they can get their act together and get playing the way they're capable of, they'll certainly really won't make a difference, I think, in their outcome. Now, as far as the season series between these two teams, it was pretty much handled quite easily by the Oilers. They had a 7-2 record against the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg defense had all kinds of trouble with the top scorers in the Oilers, like McDavid and Draisaitl. Goaltending was pretty good on the Oilers side as well and kept them in the game. And at the end of the day here, they just absolutely dominated Winnipeg. And will they continue to do so in the playoffs? Well, let's continue to analyze here and see what Winnipeg has to do to maybe make sure that they have a different outcome. So looking at the regular season breakdown of the stats here, the Edmonton Oilers were one of the higher scoring teams in the league with 183 goals for 7th best, while allowing 154 for 12th best. So overall, pretty good results there. The Jets had 170 goals for 13th best and 152 against for 10th best. So not drastically different. Obviously, the Oilers allowed a few more. The Jets obviously gave up a few less, but still small advantage to the Oilers there, but nothing too drastic. When it comes to special teams, the Oilers had the absolutely best and most lethal power play in the NHL with a success rate of 27.6. That's pretty crazy as far as how well they convert. But when you look at the personnel they can put out there, it's not a wonder why. The Winnipeg Jets also had a solid power play at 23% for 7th best. So they both have lethal power plays. Obviously, staying out of the box on both sides is going to be important here. Now, when it comes to the penalty kill, the Oilers had an 82.5% success rate for 9th best, whereas the Jets had an 80.5% success rate for 13th best. So, slight edge to the Oilers in that category as well. Face-offs were only 0.1 difference, with the Oilers having 50.4 and the Jets being 50.5, both near the middle of the pack in the NHL. So clearly not a great deal of difference really statistically. Based on these stats, the Oilers have a few minor advantages. They're slightly more offensive and slightly better on the PK. But overall, Winnipeg certainly could have themselves, where they can stay in the games and have a chance to win if they can play to their top qualities and best of their abilities. Now, let's take a look at the goaltending matchup and see how things fare in that regard. Now, the Oilers were led by surprise goaltender Mike Smith. When he was signed on a one-year deal, I know a lot of people kind of cringe because last year for Mike Smith, especially during the bubble playoffs and last year, things were not good for him. He didn't have a great season, but after the Oilers failed to land Jacob Markstrom through free agency, and they also were having trade talks with a few other teams as well, when most of that was falling through and proved to be too expensive, they brought back the older statesman here, Mike Smith, on a one-year deal, and he's played absolutely phenomenal for them this year. Had a really, solid comeback season, one of the better ones he's had recently. He put up a record of 21-6-2, a 2.3 goals against, a 923 save percentage, and put up 3 shutouts. And it's a good thing because Mikko Koskinen didn't really hold up his end of the bargain this year. That contract that he has is proven to be not so good, which we all kind of thought from the get-go. But Koskinen had a record of 13-13-0, a 317 goals against, and an 899 save percentage. So Smith had to carry the bulk of the load, and I suspect he'll definitely be the starter in Game 1. And I think for the Oilers' sake, they hope that nothing happens, that they have to make a change, because I think they have way more confidence right now in Mike Smith than they do in Mikko Koskinen. Now, comparing Smith's numbers to the Jets starter Connor Hellebuyck. Hellebuyck had a record of 24-17-3, a 258 goals against, and a 916 save percentage with 4 shutouts. So, ultimately, I think if you ask most people who's the better goalie, Connor Hellebuyck or Mike Smith, they probably would say Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, he's a guy who's been in the Vezina conversation, the numerous times in the past 2-3 years. But overall, statistically, if you look at the records here and the stats, Smith had a little bit better of a season. So Connor Hellebuyck needs to play to his full potential. Just like I said with the Blues and Avalanche, Jordan Binnington has that ability to steal the game for the Blues and keep them in it, which he showed in Game 1. Even though the Blues lost, it would have been a slaughter situation if Binnington wouldn't have played so strong. And Hellebuyck can do the same for Winnipeg. There was a lot of times last year, especially, when Winnipeg had no business winning games, but Connor Hellebuyck was the reason they won. This year, it was about that a little bit, but not as much, because they did get better team play in front of them. But still, Hellebuyck has that ability to steal games. And even though Smith has a slight edge statistically over the last little while here, I still would say that right now, it's really not an advantage one way or the other. Connor Hellebuyck can keep them in it. Mike Smith can keep his team in it. And it could be a very strong goaltending duel the whole way through. Now, of course, backing up Hellebuyck is Laurent Brossoit. Brossoit had a decent record of 6-6-0, a 242 goals against, and a 918 save percentage with 1 shutout. So I do think it's probably fair to say that the Jets would be more comfortable going to their backup than Edmonton. So maybe slight edge to Winnipeg in that regard with the overall depth of the position at the organization. Now let's compare the top scorers for each of these teams. Now, of course, the Edmonton Oilers are blessed to have Connor McDavid, certainly the league's top performer this year. 105 points, which is absolutely insane in 56 games. Draisaitl had 84. Tyson Barrie, 48. He had a phenomenal bounce back year. Darnell Nurse with 36. Nugent Hopkins with 35. And Jesse Puljujarvi with 25. So clearly, the Oilers have the more elite talent, even though the Jets also have some elite scorers and guys who can put up big points. McDavid and Draisaitl are certainly a step above them, as well as just about everybody else in the league here. Now, the Jets' top scorers start here with center iceman Mark Scheifele with 63 points, followed by Kyle Connor at 50. Nick Ehlers at 46. Now, Ehlers' injury down the stretch also played a big role in their lack of success, and they certainly went downhill after he got hurt. Hopefully he can come back. I know there's some question marks on whether or not he'll be available for Game 1. I know there's a lot of people that are optimistic he will be, but that's not confirmed yet, at least to the best of my knowledge. Blake Wheeler also had 46 points. He missed a little bit of time this year too. Andrew Kopp had a great year at 39 points, and defenseman Neil Pionk at 32. So clearly the Oilers have an advantage with having more high-end elite scoring talent. There's no doubt about it. But could you make an argument that the Jets maybe have a little bit more secondary scoring and have their scoring spread out more with more depth through the lineup? I do think that's fair to say. Now, the Oilers this year, they have their awesome performances from Leon and Connor. Obviously, guys like Nugent Hopkins had a solid year. Jesse Puljujarvi pitched in. They have guys like Yamamoto and others who can also contribute. But if you look at the Winnipeg Jets lineup, you have Scheifele, you have Wheeler, you have Ehlers if he's healthy. You have Pierre-Luc Dubois, who hasn't really hit his full stride. If he can play like he did in last year's playoffs, that's going to be a big boost. Andrew Kopp is up there having a solid year. And even the bottom of the lineup, like the Winnipeg Jets, have guys like Adam Lowry, Mason Appleton. Like, they can be big roles here too. So I really think that even though the Oilers have an advantage when it comes to the high-end talent, I think the Jets have maybe a little bit more spread out and maybe overall a slightly better lineup. The only problem is that Draisaitl and McDavid score at such a high rate that the Jets defense are going to have all kinds of trouble containing them. They've had it all year. I don't see anything changing in that regard. So at the end of the day here, I think the Oilers are going to win this series. Now, I think the Winnipeg Jets can maybe push it to the point that they can get it to maybe 7 games. I'm going to say probably closer to 6. But the Oilers have dominated this team all year. And the main difference here is that the Oilers' blue line can do a little bit better job containing the Jets' top guys compared to the Jets' defense containing the Oilers' top guys. It's like they've been giving them fits all year. They just don't have the guys, which I'm not really sure anybody does. Because anybody stop Connor McDavid? Not really. I mean, obviously, over time, if you have the right full team defense effort to kind of contain them, you can kind of slow them down a little bit, but you can't completely stop them. But if the rest of that lineup continues to produce, and obviously we'll see how things go. But we know in the playoffs, secondary scoring is absolutely huge, and team defense is huge, and goaltending is huge. So a lot of factors there. So I'm still going with the Oilers. I think they have what it takes. They have had the better blue line this year. Goaltending has been fairly even, and you get the X factor in Draisaitl and McDavid. So to me, they win in 6 games or less. But I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Down in the comments, give me your predictions and why you're picking that team to win, and we'll discuss further down in the comments. So as I mentioned, stay tuned for the full prediction video, including Stanley Cup winner, coming up here shortly, and we'll go through it. I want to know who your Stanley Cup predictions are as well. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around for that, as well as all the news and rumors from all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.